Call to order the City of Trinidad Planning and Zoning Security Commission regular meeting, agenda March 12th, 2024. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Moderano, Armijo, Spain, Coker,
Here.
Rollo, here, Norris,
Here.
Leone.
Here. Approval of minutes, January 9th, 2024, regular meeting minutes. Well, I don't know why that's even on there. Is that supposed to be on there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because we didn't have the meeting in February.
Okay. We're able to read them. Any omissions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second
I have a motion, a first and a second. Roll call.
Coker,
I abstain. I don't believe I was here for that meeting.
Rollo,
it. Yes.
Norris,
Yes.
Leone.
Yes. Old business? I see none. Public hearing. PSTM Architectural and Planning Incorporated 2024 vacate 01 Paul Glenn request for a major impact review to vacate a portion of Hyman Street at 528 Hyman Street, Trinidad, Colorado. Staff.
My apologies, Commission. I'm going to recommend that we continue this public hearing, the next regular meeting at April 9th, 2024. Yesterday, an adjacent property owner came in with the map. And on this map, there's a possibility that she might lose some access. The map showed ownership that I originally had as a different owner, the different adjacent owner. So I'm gonna recommend we continue this hearing to give staff some time to sort out the ownership and then as well give everyone a chance to work on an access agreement if necessary.
Okay, so then we'll make a motion to put that particular item back to April 9th, is what you're saying?
April 9th, 2024, yes.
So, do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll give you a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion made, second to put that back till April 9th of 2024. Roll call?
Coker,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Norris,
Yes.
Leone.
Yes. Okay, I guess that's why you're here, Mike.
Yep.
Proposed amendments to chapter 14 land use code. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'll let Nick go ahead and give an introduction here and then.
Go ahead, Sam.
So I've been in this position only for 3 months, but using the land code, I use it every day. The land use code, and overall I think it's really great. It's actually very easy for me to pick up. You guys know I don't have background in planning, but I do appreciate it because it is easy for me to pick up and easy for me to use every day. But in that, there are a couple suggestions we have, and this is from me and other staff on the city. It's just using the code, day to day. And mostly this is going to be to ease the process for new businesses, and just some other common issues that come up quite a bit, just that some gaps we probably need to look at. So I'm going to go through them, the proposed amendments, and I'm going to kind of look to you to see if you would entertain the idea of amending these. And if you do want to entertain the idea, at least we'll come back with some formal recommendations on April 9th, 2024, the next regular meeting. And yeah, like I said, I'm just looking for some feedback from the planning commission, see if you guys are open to these or if I should not even, waste my time. It's just, it's, it's totally up to you guys that way. So the first one is the definition of a setback. This is the first day I was hired here, this came up. So it's by far the most common issue when we're reviewing building permits. Staff would just like to add some verbiage to clarify the setback distances from the public right of way or property line to the face of the structure, and not an overhang. Like I said, this is it comes up quite a bit that we are holding someone to, let's say it's 5 feet, we hold them 5 feet off their overhang, and in the spirit of this definition, I believe it's supposed to be from the face of the structure, so the actual wall. So that'd be the first one if you guys are open to.
So what you're saying is,
Sorry, the only thing I would add to that, because you'll see this again, in your historic, you have historic architecture, and your eaves, on those historic buildings, those eave overhangs are traditional, and the building code actually even permits overhangs, as long as they're not across a property line. The building code actually allows those eaves to be in the setbacks per code without fire ratings. So there's a certain distance, but this code amendment would also be in the context of trying to encourage those better, the more historic architecture styles to be met with new housing around town. If that makes sense. By encouraging eaves.
okay, so if I understand, go ahead. You done, Mike?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, that's it.
Okay. So if I understand this right, you're saying the overhang is gotta be from the building? From the building basic wall or what?
Yeah, so the way it's in the land use code right now, some of our group interprets it as the overhang cannot be in that setback. So then we're making people move even if it's only a foot, making them move their building over a foot to accommodate the setback.
Okay.
So, and that's just the way some of the city staff, even though we've talked about it, it's not in the spirit of the definition yet from the structure, so that's the actual wall, not the overhang. So, allowing us to modify this probably help clear that up for us.
Okay, I understand that.
Are we gonna
I would
discuss?
also just add to that in every land use code I've ever worked in, which is quite a few, it's always been in the building face, not an eave.
We're in favor.
So that's so in other words, that proposal is what staff comments is?
Yes.
So do we have to have a motion to accept that, or do you want to go through all of them? And then, or do you
Yeah, I
want it
think
individually? Do you want it individually, Mike? Or do you want them
Yeah,
combined?
I think if you guys just want to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this, we got a majority of you giving us a thumbs up. Well, again, we'll bring back a formal, what has to happen per the code is you guys actually need to look at actual ordinance language that you'll be sending to the city council. So what we don't want to do here tonight is put anything in like a proposal that you guys don't deem worth looking at. So tonight's really exploratory. So if you think yes on this, and the majority of you do that, we'll bring it back and then we'll have a formal public hearing on it.
So basically, you'll probably reword the verbiage and then bring that back to the table to us. And then from that point, it would go back to city council, correct?
Yes. So you'll actually see the actual text amendment at the next meeting of exactly how it will now be worded. But again, before we go through and talk to also, the city legal staff will also have to look at this stuff too, is because it's going in ordinance. So again, before we get too far down the road, it's important for us to bounce these ideas off the planning commission as required by code.
Okay.
So, are we gonna vote or?
Do you want to have a vote here, or just a thumbs up? Thumbs up.
Thumbs up is what we need
Okay.
We'll do a thumbs up tonight.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Norris?
Yeah, no, I think that.
Okay,
This is not normal.
Again,
go ahead, staff, moving on.
You're not making any official action,
Yeah.
you're just providing staff direction, so.
So the next one, we got a limited impact review. And this is when it's required. So staff would like to clarify if the use is permitted, it does not need to go through a limited impact review. And it should just go through an admin review. So what's happened in the past is, or what can happen is if we don't interpret, if someone comes in and they say, I'm gonna build a commercial building on a commercial lot, right now you kind of have to really look through the code to understand that they don't have to come to the planning commission. It's an approved use, so it should go straight through and be able to go straight to an administrative review and get work on the building permit. And that's just, it's kind of unclear in the section 1423, just because it does say commercial and industrial developments. That's kind of a general term, but if a use is approved, we'd like to see it just go straight to, not have to come to planning commission and just go straight to administrative review and a building permit.
I thought we already did that. We did that with Michael when we went through,
Yeah,
and if it was a use permitted by right, it
okay.
skipped us, right?
Yes.
Did we already do that?
Yeah, but staff's looking to amend that, what's on the staff report, in that, it would just that it says site plan, commercial, and industrial development. It's listed as limited impact review. So to not have to go through it, you actually have to go deeper into the code to section 1453-C, or C, and that's when it says that it's not, if it's commercial approved use, or if it's approved use, you don't have to go to limited impact. So all limited impact has to come to planning commission. We're looking to amend that to make sure that if it's approved, we'll probably just put an exemption. Approved uses do not have to come to limited impact review.
So, sorry, and Nick, just to clarify, you're misstating something. It's not approved, it's permitted uses versus conditional uses, right?
Okay.
So if you look at, you guys see the use table on the screen, or no? Can you see my screen?
Well, we can
Yeah,
see
you
that.
can see
that it is a
table. You can see the table, right?
Yeah.
So at table 1442, whenever there's a permitted use, if somebody
1422?
is trying to do
42.
that use, they wouldn't be required to come in for limited impact. Right now, because it's under the limited impact, I think a lot of applicants get thrown when they come in to talk to Nick or ahead of doing their own research. So this will clear this up, that permitted uses don't have to come to the planning commission for a review.
So it's kind of like the intent of what we thought was
We did.
there, we're making so the nuts and bolts actually make it so that we get there. So we make this change so that we can do what we intended for them to do.
Which was, we were trying to make it so it would not be so many hurdles for,
Involved, yeah.
and I think that was the intent of what we were trying to accomplish. Now, this is just a general question. If that was like a mixed use, something like that would probably have to come to planning and zoning. That's not the same kind of situation, correct? Like building a commercial building is building a commercial building, I get that. But what if that commercial building dealt with, commercial on the main floor, but yet apartments or something on the upper floor?
Right.
That's more like mixed use. Does that fall in this same category? And would that take it out of our hands?
No, it'd be dependent upon, again, the use table 1442, and whether or not it was permitted versus conditional in there. One thing I would say that overall, if you remember when I came in, we really didn't touch zoning in the process that I did, right? We looked at review processes and the decisions that we made on that first code edit. A lot of what you're seeing from Nick, which I appreciated, is that he's really spent a lot of time with the code and really read things and said, some of this stuff isn't 100% clear, and if it's not clear to me, it's certainly not going to be clear to an applicant.
Correct.
And so, again, what we're stating is that if it's a permitted use in the 14-42, which is the use table, then it is allowed to proceed to building permit. Obviously, there's other things that could potentially kick it to a hearing with you, but if it's somebody coming in that wants to do a new business that's permitted by right, then they should be able to proceed to get going.
No, I can agree with that statement.
Okay. Is that all thumbs up around?
Okay.
All right.
The next one I have is a major impact review procedure, the conceptual review. So you can remember we did a concept review with the mark. That was, we did that with city council. And that was a great example of when this should be used, because that's a project that's going to come to you. It's a project the city council should probably take a look at as well. Everyone gets a great look at it. But the problem is with major impact review, the concept review is required. And so staff is looking to give the city manager ability to waive that concept review. Because there's cases like a vacate where the concept review doesn't add anything. Telling city council and you guys prior, hey, we're gonna vacate this road, doesn't really add any value for our meeting with the planning commission, or the planning commission meeting, it doesn't add anything for city council. They're gonna see it anyway, or you guys are gonna see it anyway. So, the staff would like to add that in there, that the city manager can waive the concept review if it's not gonna add any value to the application.
And is that,
And I think what I would add to that is, there are certainly applications, like annexations or larger developments that are 100% germane to bring concept review. It's really these kind of minor requests that are, that trigger because of major impact review is triggered whenever the council has to do an ordinance. And there's a lot of things by statute that the city council has to take up on their land use by ordinance. And some of these are, it says adding I think the biggest issue that we've found is it adds a whole extra month to somebody getting through the process when a concept review is really not going to add context to what you guys really need. Again, the idea behind concept review is when you have these larger applications, is for you to bring up concerns and issues so the applicant can amend their application to address those when they're coming to see you. And like, for instance, the right-of-way vacation is a great example. There's not much to amend in an application. It's, the state law says this owner gets half and the other owner gets half. So, there's not much big here, and so those are the kind of examples. I think I would talk with Steve. He would be very judicious about that decision. And the way he would address it is that if he decides to waive a concept review, he would be under his city manager report with the council. He'd be notifying him that he took the action to waive a concept review application. So basically the council would have the opportunity to say, well, hold on, wait a minute. We do want that to go to concept review. So there's a little bit of a check and balance there.
but at the end of the day, for me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That all boils down to the decision of the city manager, or is that a meeting amongst staff that makes that decision before it goes to city council?
So all applications everything in UC goes through a pre-development meeting. And if there's any, what I would say is that Steve attends those meetings, and if there's nothing to the application and everyone's head is shaking, like, oh yeah, this will fly, at the staff level, that's when you'll see it. If there's issues, what I will say is one thing that I've been impressed upon from day one with the way the city handles development is that every Tuesday at 8:30, this entire department head staff is available for applicants to come and present their applications. And so that meeting is really when that decision is made. So you're correct. It isn't Steve doing this in a vacuum. He has all the other department heads weighing in on the conversation. He has Nick weighing in on the conversation. And again, he would also be telling in his manager report the council of that decision.
So, go ahead. So what I'm thinking is, but not all applications are the same. How do you bypass that? If they're not the same?
Well, it's up to the manager's discretion, right? So the concept review was put in place to be a non-binding meeting where applicants get feedback. So if we're at a pre-development conference and everyone in the room is saying this is, unfortunately we just have to go through the motions to pass an ordinance to help you out to get you to do, like a right-of-way vacation is a really good example. There's no utilities, there's nothing that the city staff objects to for that right-of-way vacation. Those are the types of applications where, it just allows somebody to go forward without having, and we can start the public noticing. The other thing to really keep in mind is that this in no way prevents any kind of review from you, because if it's major impact, the first step then becomes the meeting with the planning commission, right? So they're gonna wind up in front of the planning commission right away instead of a concept review. I think there is a little bit of a leap of faith on this. But again, in the vein of trying to keep people moving through process, and a whole month is a lot of time for an applicant to lose if they're just trying to do something simple that meets an ordinance. But if you don't like it, we can do that. And just keep in mind, the intent of this is really to put applications of substance in front of both the planning commission and council. But we have some in the hopper that are of substance that would definitely warrant concept review coming.
But then again, just for clarification, that all is judged by staff.
That's what
Yeah.
Does the city manager bring it to staff? Does the city manager bring that to staff?
I do.
You bring it to staff?
Yeah, I bring it to staff and the city manager, yeah. So we have, in our development meeting, I told them, I got an application for this, and if it's a big enough, application, then I won't even pitch it. Whoever the applicant is will come in and they'll pitch it themselves. So, like the Mark, I only have very limited experience. They pitched that project themselves to our development team for the city.
So you will be the one that bring it to the city manager also? You'll bring it to staff and city manager?
Yes.
Yeah, and if you remember, per the code, a pre-application conference with the staff is required of all applications. So that first meeting always occurs. And in fact, but normally on bigger applications, like I'm not at liberty to discuss it because you guys are gonna hear it soon. But we have an example where an applicant's come back probably 2 or 3 times now because they've gotten feedback from CDOT or other review agencies. And they've had to amend their site plans and had to amend utilities before we're ready to continue it on to you guys. So those are the types of applications that absolutely, if they're major impact, will come for a concept review. Again, it's really it's really these more administrative, you know, again, right-of-way vacations are required by statute to go through ordinance and therefore are a major impact. So,
I mean, it would be safe to say just that, I mean, I'll just say, call it how I see it. And I will say that, you know, I personally, I come in here and I'm dependent on staff's information. Now, I do agree, you know, there are some things we did talk that some things really, to make it go, to speed up the process and it wasn't so costly on the potential builder or whatever, that we were trying to find ways within the code to make some of this happen a little bit faster and cut out a couple things. And maybe that's how I'm kind of reading this in a sense. We're just trying to cut loose of something. It doesn't mean we're not going to see it, because still staff can say, no, this needs to go to planning and zoning. That needs to where it needs to go first. Because I will be honest with you, that when I read through some of this, for me, I felt like, all right, it feels like some things are going to get taken away and we're not going to see this. It's becoming in-house. And I will be honest with you, that are my fears. I am not looking for things to get taken away from us. I've seen it in the past. That's not what I want to see. I mean, I want the city to go in the right direction. I want things to move in a faster motion for the potential builders, developers, whatnot. I mean, I want things to go in a certain process, but I don't want to feel like, as Planning and Zoning Commission, I just don't also want to feel like things are being taken away and kind of done in-house. Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah.
it does, and so what I'll add to that, I think it's really important to remember, if it's major impact, it must come in front of the planning commission. So there's no way, so the steps are concept review, planning commission, city council. What we're saying is that on these administrative applications, it would just, concept review would be next, and it would come directly to the planning commission. And again, this only applies to major impact, and therefore all major impacts still come to the planning commission first for recommendation to council.
Well, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to even bring this up, but you know, we've done one concept review, correct? With that. Okay, and when it got brought, it kind of just felt like their presentation, because we didn't have any information ahead of time to even be able to voice concerns. So to me, the concept review was kind of worthless, because we're all in this room together. It's us, city council. It's the first time we're hearing anything about it. So you don't even have, to me, it was a worthless endeavor, because there was no time to even be educated, to ask questions or concerns. You're kind of just hit with it right there in a public meeting. So to me, the concept review, I thought was kind of a waste of time, but that was just my opinion.
Well, let's do this. Let's meet in the middle here on the amendment. So it says the city manager shall provide the planning and zoning and variance commission and city council members copies of the development review request and concept of the plan review for discussion at the joint meeting. Let's make a deal here. We'll put that shall occur. So council packets go out on Friday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So 4 days ahead of the joint meeting. So that way you guys are getting a packet prior, so you have the weekend to review. We'll man it.
Perfect.
There you go. So, all right. So we'll bring back this code section with the language here. Let's keep it moving, and you guys you guys can revisit this one. But we'll make the suggestion, and then you guys can provide us a little bit more feedback after you actually read the actual text wording. Does that sound okay?
Fair enough.
So we'll add in the 4 days prior, or we'll talk to Audra about how that should be worded. It might be 3 days. So I just want to make sure that you guys get the information the same way as the council. That sound right?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean thumbs up or what is it? Thumbs up on the review?
I think that one's a thumb in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie shit trailer that you're like, well, I might watch that on Netflix, but I don't want to watch that in the theater.
Oh, goodness.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, so the next one's types of subdivisions. This is gonna add sections to address re-subdivision, amended plats, insubstantial change to recorded plat, recording of boundary plat, filing of surveyed plats, and boundary plats. So all these actions will go through an admin review process and need city staff sign off prior to being recorded. All these actions listed above are completed by a licensed surveyor and filed appropriately with the county. But not having to have a public hearing with the commission, city council helps development progress faster while meeting requirements under state statute. And this is no change to the minor and major subdivision. This is just for some of these. I don't know. You want to take a shot, Mike? Because this one, this one.
Yeah, this is, so what I will say is that these are under, in every code that I've dealt with, these subdivision exemptions are in codes. The issue we've actually run up against this with licensed surveyors coming into the city. So whenever a surveyor goes out on site, if you say you hire a surveyor to survey your property and there's a missing pin on the ground, when they set that pin, they are required by law to file a new boundary plat at the county, right? The issue we've been having is that because there's no city line on there that says, where they come in and get a signature from the city, there have been plats filed that add or might have triggered a subdivision or something. I've never seen as many of these as I've seen in Trinidad, and I've only been working on this stuff for a year, but it has come up routinely. So what this does is when a surveyor does one of these types of actions, which are basically administrative by statute, what they have to do is they have to come in and there'll be a line item that says, there'll be a city sign off, and the city will be able to inspect the plat to ensure that it didn't take a minor or a major subdivision process off. And if it doesn't, then the city manager will sign the plat. If it does, then we send them, obviously to the planning commission or to the planning commission council through limited impact and major impact. But right now, the issue we run up against is that surveyors have said to us, there is no rule in your code. I'm just going to go to the county and file this. Does that make sense? They're required, under state law, a licensed surveyor has to file that plat when they do these actions.
So does that mean it doesn't always happen here in Trinidad? Is that what you're getting at? Is that hasn't always happened here? So by making sure that's in there, then we should not be missing the boat time after time again, correct?
Yeah, we've had, again, I've only seen this, I just came up with, it's interesting to me, like the stuff on the south side of your town is meet and bound descriptions, and they've never been surveyed, and they don't have boundary plats. So they're legals when people buy property, or just a warranty that legally describes it. And it's just a warranty to you that legal description doesn't have a boundary plat. In today's world, if you buy a piece of real estate, the bank requires you to get a survey, right?
Correct.
And what we're getting is people buying real estate, it's a meet and bounds, and the bank's requiring a survey. So the surveyor is producing a boundary plat, but they're required by law to file it, right? So we're seeing a lot of these real estate transactions, and there's just no process that says the city has the right to inspect that boundary plat to ensure it's accurate, ensure that like a city easement that might need to be on that plat is platted, whatever it might be. So it's just giving us another little check and balance power, and it's really in the vein of, keeping it easy for the survey community, so they're not having to come in every time someone sells a new plat, but also ensuring that, you know, hey, the city looked at this and you didn't create a non-conforming lot or something like that. Does that make sense to everyone?
It doesn't? To
You
me,
got something like we just did with.
I mean, I understand.
Cause he had to come back and give 8% of the property there just for one house.
But I think that came because of how it was originally set within, because that was originally was set to be,
A major,
a
less than
development.
5 acres.
Yes, it was development.
Well, that's what this is, right? Isn't it what they're talking about, major, minor? It's not just like for a house, it's not gonna be on just like a sale of a house when
Right,
they're
no.
doing it, it's for actual, the subdivisions, correct?
No, so your guys are jumping down to the land dedication, we'll get to next.
Yeah.
No, I was on the top one, the 1432.
Yeah,
Is,
so, sorry, that's the way the code section reads, right? Those are the types of subdivisions that are listed under there.
Right,
Well, so those, don't pay attention, sorry, that's not what we're not amending major, minor, condominium, townhouse. Well, lot line or easement adjustment and lot consolidation would fall under these other, and we would be adding these additional subdivision exemptions. So so basically what we're saying is we're gonna add sections to subdivision that would be administrative review. There would be re-subdivision, amended plats, insubstantial change to a recorded plat, or recording of a boundary plat.
It's almost like a
And
lot of
again,
record.
keep in mind that you'll see the definitions all have, if we proceed with this, you'll be able to go through, and if you want to kick any of these to a limited impact review, at the next meeting, we can discuss that. But we're running we've run into this issue with the recording of the boundary plats, especially quite a bit.
I think that's where I'm getting it.
is there a way to
I'm
see like an example of what you're running into so we understand what,
Yeah, let me see if I can, give me one moment.
Because
Actually, the Edward Jones would be a really good one to show you, because you actually saw it. Let me see if I actually have can you guys see the plat?
you can see it, can't
Are you guys able to see my screen?
We can see your
oh,
screen.
you're good.
Yeah.
See the plat, right?
Mhm.
So this was the Edward Jones project. This is a great example. So one here. When they came in, this was a meets and bounds description. So by law, again, they're not subdividing the property or doing anything to it, but by law, by state law, the surveyor must now file this plat. And what we're saying is that in this case, the surveyor would come in, present it to the city manager through the city staff would review the plat notes, and there'd be a city sign off prior to him being allowed to file a new boundary. He hasn't changed, he never changed the shape of the parcel, didn't subdivide it, isn't dedicating any right of way. But the only fact is that there was never a plat created, right? When these folks bought this lot, they bought a warranty deed with a legal description. But by law, when he went out there and set these pins,
Now,
he's required now to file it. And what we're saying is, we want the ability by staff to look at this plat and say, is there a easement in the legal description that isn't represented on this plat that should be for something along those lines.
Right, and not all
It's
surveys.
it's a check for us to make sure that we've seen it before they go to file. 'Cause once this is filed, then it's a real issue for us to fix it later.
Right. One of the things I've seen is not all surveys include easements or utility lines. You have to pay extra for all these things, so I would agree that that's important for the city to be able to do. Because if it just gets recorded, they don't have to do all of that, but if you require it, then they will have to do that. Right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
They'll be required to show the easements and all that on the plat.
It's gonna cost more for the person,
Is that correct?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, if they're resetting pins, again, if a surveyor's going out there and resetting pins and under state law, they're required to file, that's what's gonna trigger this.
Yeah.
So an ILC, for instance, an improvement location certificate, which is something you get when you buy a surveyor stamps that tells a bank that all the improvements are within the lot lines. That's an example of something that wouldn't come in front of us, right? That's not filed and recorded. It's the stuff that's recorded that comes to the city under this. With your permission, I think this is probably a substantial change to the code that we want to bring forward. And each of those things that are in that staff report will be their own code section that will have a description of what that process means. And so at our next meeting, if you want, I would, again, like this project on the screen is a great example of when we ran into issues with like needing a potential trail easement, drainage easements, things like that. And the city was like, well, we don't have a process to require this, so what do we do? And that became an issue, and that's what we're trying to resolve. So my suggestion is that with your blessing, we come back with these and then let's scrutinize them and you guys can decide if yes, they should be administrative or if any of those actually should come in front of the planning commission for your consideration. Because we could actually pick any of these from administrative review to a limited impact review based on your comments too at the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. So the next one is a public land dedication. And this one, is right now it's required for all development. And this is recommended by the city manager to remove it from requirement for every development, and just keep it for major subdivisions. And all it's, here we have, when you have a commercial, you have 8% and residential 15%. But what's happening is we have a lot of these small leftover areas that the city can't maintain because they're too small. They're too small to use. And it's difficult for the city crews to maintain. So it's not really offering any benefit on most of these. And the major exception there would be major subdivision where we'd still require that to either, for residential be 15%, and commercial be 8%.
So this one, what I will say is one that we really do want your input on. I don't have a preconceived notion of what we should do here. This one actually has been brought up by the city manager because they were citing a property for a weed violation, and then they realized it was actually dedicated to the city, and they weren't maintaining it. And so I think it raised the issue of why are we requiring these small little corners of a lot for a subdivision to be dedicated when, on every development. I think you brought up just in your last comment about the gentleman who was trying to build one house and and because it's 15% of the land area, is a huge chunk of land because it was a big parcel, for a house. So, I mean, certainly major subdivisions that are adding lots, substantially to the community should have places for people to recreate, or if it's a major development with commercial, you want there to be some type of amenity, right, with that major development. But on these little ones, we're running into the issue. So a couple options to think about. One is the other one that I've seen in other towns, the way they handle this, is that if the developer actually builds and maintains the open space area or the park, that you can actually, at the planning commission and city council's discretion, reduce the amount potentially.
So if you.
So obviously, sorry, go ahead.
If you change this, like just using the apartment building that's going in, they're required to build parks over there for the kids, right? Would that eliminate their requirement to do that?
Potentially, yes.
I would,
But this is under.
on that basis, I'd tank that one.
Yeah, tank it.
Let
They should
me
build parks.
retract that, because right now, let me just double check myself. I want to say that this provision actually is only subject, Nick, am I wrong in that saying that this is only subject to subdivision, or is it every development?
It says residential development on here.
There's no more than 8 of those little parks that the city owns, so I would think it can't be all of them.
No, it says right here, so if you look at the code, the city of Trinidad requires land dedication for these purposes in any new subdivision or re-subdivision. So the land dedication only applies to subdivision. Per your code as it says today. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's actually, this is one of those ones that we really would love to hear your suggestions on how to do this so that we actually get meaningful space out of developers that isn't some arbitrary number. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's tremendous value to have small recreational areas available in a community. And so from that standpoint, I'm not in favor of relaxing statutes. The maintenance issues.
I agree.
The maintenance issue, we have the lowest lodging tax of anything. If we pass a lodging tax, then we will have a Parks and Recreation Department that would be able to maintain these parks. So,
But ifs.
and that is
Ifs do it.
that is it.
So,
I'm not-
I agree with the sentiment that you guys just stated.
I think the city's giving too much.
About,
I think the city's giving too much away there. You're asking to give too much away.
no, I don't think I think from where we're sitting, from the staff standpoint, this is what we're bringing, the issue, so let's just be clear. We're not trying to say that we want to get rid of the open space requirement. The issue we're seeing is that on these small, like a minor subdivision where someone's splitting 2 or 3 lots, the open space that we've got, that the city has gotten during those processes is useless because it's not big enough, right? And so I guess what you guys might start thinking about, and again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, I don't think we're saying we should not have an open space requirement, but what would make this requirement actually be productive for new development, right? Would we want to put in here a provision? So I'm not, so don't take this as my suggestion. I'm just giving you an example of of something that you could potentially do. So right now it says for residential development, not less than 50% of the land area of the tract being subdivided should be dedicated. That, I mean, people could, as of today, people could dedicate a drainage area as their 15%, right? And kids aren't gonna play on a bunch of rocks and mud. So what do you want to see in these developments? Is it, that a developer shall be responsible for creating and providing in the proposal something of not less than 15%, and considerations will be given on dependent on like a good example is someone can dedicate a strip of land for a trail, but not put the trail in. So that strip of land can sit there for 20 years before the city finds funding for the trail.
So can't the
But should a
developer,
developer get credit for the expense of the trail, and therefore their requirement be slightly reduced? Does that make sense, phrasing that?
yeah, can't the developer be
Like if
required?
I'm a developer and I put in a playground and a gazebo and a picnic area, and I actually pay for all the improvements to that, should I get credit because now it's all constructed and I'm handing the keys to the city at that point, you know what I mean?
But
Versus
does
the
it
city
have
having
to
to
be
go out and
handed
find
over
money
to
to
the
put there.
city? Like, for an example, if you buy in a subdivision, not around here, because we don't have any here, but up north, there's places where you buy in a subdivision, you pay HOA fees, right? The developer puts in the park, you pay $35 a month, and they maintain the park.
Right.
Why don't we start taking some of the responsibility away from the city and put it on the developer and the future homeowners to pay for those things?
I love it. It's a great, again, and then again, in a major subdivision scenario, creating an HOA and creating the covenants, they're going through that process already, right? So creating an HOA fee that will be directed towards park maintenance, and again, it can be part of that. So that's the kind of feedback we're looking for tonight. Is that something you guys want?
Well,
What would you want to see?
I guess the question I have to ask, so there's a complex that has been approved, if I'm correct, and they're proposing the park and all that stuff. I mean, wouldn't it be, let me just ask the question. So if they were putting the park in place, wouldn't they be responsible to take care of it?
That's how it should be.
Right.
So if you're referring to the rezone, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
The apartment complex? So real quick, I want to be clear, that application is not subject to this. They're doing that playground because they want to have it available for their development. And it also, the reason they're doing it beyond being good developers is that the state, to get the tax credit awards, requires that kind of stuff. But this, again, so this is, be clear, this only applies to subdivision as written.
So is there a way to form it to where it makes sense? Like, for an example, if we take Mr. Peters, who had the 60 acres, or don't hold me to the number, he wanted to build one house. The city required him to give all that land, which he did exactly what you said. It was that bottom land that nobody's gonna use anyway, but they made him deed it to the city, which is kind of it didn't make sense to me, but that's the way the code was written. And that was considered a major subdivision, which I didn't quite understand either, because it was one house, and he took that 60 acres and made his parcel and two little ones, but they considered it a major subdivision. So it seems like there's a lot of
Again,
things that
parks-
don't make common sense. Maybe a lot of things need to be tweaked. I don't know.
Well, he also,
Gave up.
if you're going back to that, he gave a utility easement too,
Oh, yeah.
all the way
Utility
down
easement.
Garfield. Then he had to come back because he had interpreted the utility easement to be part of his 8% for dedicated land. But that wasn't the question, because we kind of got reprimanded for what we had started to do. At that time there, Audra came back to us and said, that's wrong for what he was doing, but he still had to give the 8%.
Yeah.
So what do you, so let's ignore the fact that you guys have this code right now for just a minute. And let's talk about, because I think what you're hearing from the city staff is that this isn't working. It's not resulting in things that are a benefit to the city. And so it's worth revisiting. So let me ask this question. Let me just throw it out there. Do you see a greater benefit if the developer actually installs the improvement in the open space?
Yes,
So
Yeah.
i.e.
Yes.
a trail or a park?
yes.
And therefore this could be reduced potentially?
Mhm.
But what about, okay, so I've seen some headlines there, so there's an agreement there. Let me ask this question too. What is your feeling on, because there's another open space we haven't, so we talked about active space. There's passive space that's important. So say, for instance, a subdivision is occurring on the Purgatory River, and as we know, having a setback off the river for migrating birds or whatever, animals that use that sensitive habitat areas, like wetland areas or something, would you consider those priorities, protecting those areas and dedicating? Again, so I'm going to use this example. In Crescent View, where I was a city planner, we had one of the largest wetlands in the country, which is the Slate River, that came into town. And those wetland areas were very sensitive because of their high quality wetland areas. So the city put a lot of emphasis on the fact that like a private property owner shouldn't own high quality wetlands, that they should be set aside open space parcels in a development. So that we did, what happens, this is a horrible example, but I'm gonna say it. We would have out-of-town buyers who would have sensitive wetlands in their backyard that was part of their yard, and they would go and put fencing in for something that would keep wildlife out of the area because it was theirs. So my question is, what do you guys think about those passive areas? Like, should we also be thinking about that or no in this open space requirement?
I personally think we should. But
And there's no right or wrong here. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. I mean, access to those kinds of wetlands is of value, and you guys are poo-pooing drainage issues as parks, but I mean, technically our Purgatory River has a lot of recreation that's in a flood zone. You couldn't build anything, but you can put up gazebos and picnic benches and all that stuff, and people can
Enjoy it.
recreate.
Right.
And you're getting good use out of it, and if a flood comes, you just put the picnic table back. So, I mean, you can get good use out of those things, and so I like what Michelle was saying with supporting wildlife availability as well, so. I don't know, they both.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought
Sorry,
that needs
go
to
ahead.
go into that.
I agree, it seems like there's some fine lines here.
And I understand the city doesn't want to have to maintain things, and I don't think they should have to.
Correct.
I don't think it should necessarily say it eliminates their responsibility as developers. I think it needs to be shifted from the city to the developer. Is that possible?
Yeah, no, I think that's possible. So again, the issue with this is it's so nuanced. But here's another really good example. So a trail. So there's a difference. Trails, for instance, and I dealt with this a lot again in Crescent View here in Salida, where we have a lot of mountain biking and recreation trails, hiking trails, etc. Under state law, if you grant recreation easement, under state law, you do not have liability as a property. And so it was put in the state statute to encourage folks to grant easements for trails, to not, because people all, the public's on my land, someone trips on a rock and breaks their arm, I'm gonna get sued, right? Classic argument, right? The state has stated that if it's dedicated as a recreation easement, that person can't sue you. You're protected under state law because you granted it as a recreation-based easement. So my point of bringing this up is, where do you guys see those types of, again, I'm trying to understand where you're at. Like if somebody grants an easement through their property that connects one section of trail to another, that's important to a trail system.
Yeah.
Is that like, it's basically saying to the staff, go out and try to get those types of facilities when these developments come in, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's giving staff some negotiating power, which this section was intended to kind of do, right? It's intended to try to get meaningful public access or meaningful public space for residents that will now be coming into the community and living in this neighborhood. Right? Am I missing a mark on that comment?
No, I think that's spot on, don't you? Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't want to eliminate their responsibility to do that.
No, and I don't think we're suggesting that. Again, I think probably the biggest issue we're seeing is that it's required of minor subdivisions. And then minor subdivisions, so let me ask the question this way. On a minor subdivision, where it doesn't make sense, would you want the planning commission to have the ability to waive a park requirement in minor subdivisions? If it doesn't make sense and there's not a reasonable place? And then in which case, you could actually even do, because you do have in the code already, a payment in lieu for that open space, so they could make a payment? Or is even that fair?
So can you refresh my memory of what is the definition of a minor subdivision?
Yeah, that's a great question. Give me 1 sec, because I don't know that off the top of my head.
I remember the major was over 5 acres, right? 5 acres or more was a major subdivision. I don't remember what the minor is.
Neither.
So minor, so here it is, minor is the entire tract is 4 acres or less and will produce 4 lots or less.
I agree, question, please.
Making it discretionary, making it discretionary is very powerful. A small pocket park, like, I mean, you can put a bench and something, I mean, you can do something in a small area sometimes, I mean, so having it discretionary gives the city the chance to see if they could get something that would be of value recreationally, and if there wasn't, then they could waive it.
And there's gonna be certain times
So,
of the year maybe that you won't be able to use that. But still, it's gonna be there.
On something small.
well, okay, so what happens if we put into, and this is just throwing out an idea here, that if we were to put into minor subdivisions, that the planning commission and council can look at, for instance, easement dedication, connectivity as part of your review for this. So I think part of the issue is as parkland dedication, whereas, like, for instance, Edward Jones, again, it wasn't a subdivision, but that's a good example of there was a trail being proposed down in Santa Fe, in getting a trail easement, on a property like that, where there was gonna be public access, where we could move the trail 10 feet off the road, which would make the user experience that much better, I mean, again, to your point, is an opportunity lost if it's not in the code.
I like that provision.
I think that's, I
Well,
think
let's
that's,
do this on this one. We're certainly not talking about waiving it. Let me ask one last question on this before we move on. Is anyone super attached to the percentages as of today? Because what I will say is one thing, and I think Nick and I will have to actually spend some time researching other communities and maybe I think the next step on this one is for us to potentially bring you back what other communities have done on this and see what maybe we can look. Again, maybe we don't need to invent the wheel here. Maybe we can rob and steal from some other communities of what they do for this requirement and bring it back. But what I wanted to sum up, I've heard that if the developer does do the improvement beyond a land dedication, that they get bonus points. How that bonus point would be, we measure that as kind of not quite there, right? We obviously have to think about that. That you don't want to waive minor subdivision requirements, that there should be a provision that open space or trail dedication, that you do consider wildlife, high quality wetland areas, public river access, etc., as priorities and can count towards open space or parkway dedication. And then the final one is that it's essential that major subdivisions are bringing forward some type of improvement, and that you would be open to HOAs being responsible for the long-term maintenance of it.
Absolutely.
Did I miss anything else in the comments?
Yeah.
Making sure I caught everything.
I think that sounds about right.
And I think we're not married to the percentages per se,
right,
right?
right.
Okay. All right, well, we have some homework to do. We're glad that you're at least amenable to looking at this provision, because I think from a staff perspective, it's resulted in some stuff, so. Okay.
No, I appreciate that, because,
When I go through this,
yeah, I'll go through lessons, but I appreciate that, because we want it to be meaningful, not just, oh, we left this vacant, it's yours, and it's just empty space. That's what, we don't want that, so we want it to be meaningful, so, yeah, I appreciate that. Next I got, this is in the zone districts, it's an establishment of zone districts, the core zone, they turned at historic preservation. One issue that came up, and it comes up quite a bit, is the map that we have has the core zone de Trinidad historical preservation mixed use and core zone de Trinidad historic preservation residential. But our code doesn't have those definitions in it. So we operate as if the code does have a definition for the core zone de Trinidad historic preservation. So we've been using it for both, but we would like to add to the code the definition of mixed use and the definition of residential, just to match the map. Because it does come up quite a bit.
and I think it's, on this one, this is a great catch by Nick. And you can see on here right now, this is the way the code currently reads. So every zone district has kind of a definition of what the zone was meant for. And where we run into this is, obviously the residential district is not the same as the historic downtown, in a lot of cases. And so providing some guidance on how that zone district standard needs to be applied. And it's really that that first neighborhood that was platted within the original town plat. And a majority of those homes were built in a manner that are non-conforming today. So allowing, for instance, something that we probably would be putting in there is allowing those historic residences to be built in the same manner that they previously were. protect that kind of historic context in that neighborhood is something that's important, that's not currently embedded in the code. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And you guys know what we're talking about as far as this area?
Like up to Second Street?
Yeah, it's up to about Second Street, so it's just right off Main Street, the first and second. It's kind of a funky area, but it's not a, yeah, it's kind of,
Even though it's HP residential, it's got this,
it's actually part of the core zone trend, that's correct.
but it's zoned HP, which allows for commercial use too.
That's right.
And that's where I think, this is just a suggestion I have, because where, from my perspective as a real estate person, it gets confusing to people. It's zoned HP, which has all the allowed uses, it's HP, but it's not quote unquote historic preservation. That's just
That's
the
right.
name of the zoning, and I wish they would change the name
Yeah.
of the zoning, because it makes people think that they have to comply with certain standards, and that's not true. It's just the zone classification, what the allowed uses are within that zone classification.
Yeah.
So what do you guys want to change for the houses?
Well, we want to add a
Add it
definition,
in there.
so right now there's nothing, right? And then we could change the name of that zone to something different, as well. I don't think that's outside of the box. If the fundamental issue is that, you currently have a zoning map
Right?
that has these two zones in it, and section 1439 establishes the zone districts per your code,
Right?
and they're just omitted.
Right,
But we need to
there
add
is
something.
no HP residential, it's just HP, and then somebody went and added residential. But I don't know why they
Zone
did.
that, I mean, your zoning map, I mean, we didn't amend, when we did all these code updates and we digitized the zoning map, they went back through all the ordinances, and at some point, the city established the HP residential zone district, but it was never codified in the code.
Right,
So it's on the zoning map, it's just not in the code.
it wasn't on the old zoning map though, that's what threw me. It was never separated out, and it wasn't in the code either, it just all of a sudden it appeared. And the only reason I know that is because I've had a map on my wall for 25 years, and I've seen it, every day, it's right in front of my desk, and then when I saw the new one, I was like, oh, that's new.
Well, and it might be something that because when we did the zoning code update, the map, that's the new map, they actually come through all of all the zoning ordinances and went through, so they probably found where it was created.
So what was
And
the
it was
definition
correct.
then?
Correct.
There is no definition, right?
Well, there's a difference between your zoning map and your code too.
Right, so like the
Once-
zone of HP residential, there's nothing defining it, correct?
Yeah, so we're looking from the direction from you folks today is, do you want, hearing it, yes, we should define this area, as something.
And see,
Yes.
that's where the dilemma lies, right?
Yeah,
So they want it to be a separate zone district than just HP.
what it is, and again, it's on the zoning map.
But it just
Well,
appeared
sorry,
on the
that's-
zoning map.
I'll have to find the ordinance that established it, because
I don't know when it got established or how, but it's never been defined that I've ever seen. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I've never seen it.
So down here, if you look, these are all the ordinances, so the zoning map was updated. They track every ordinance that's been passed to do this. So they come through the public record, and that's how this was done. Again, this was out of my scope. We actually had a different consultant review all of the past city ordinances to ensure that the zoning was correct on this map. So So I can't speak to your exact question on when it was created, but again, the area we're talking about is the orange piece here.
So if there was an ordinance made creating that area, did they have a definition when they created the ordinance?
That's a good question. We should probably spend some time and try to find it. I'm not sure though how to begin. Well, let me see here. I am not seeing something jumps out and bites me right now, so.
Yeah.
On the ordinance code.
We'll have to dig and try to find the ordinance that established it, and then hopefully there's a definition in there. And if not, we could always come back to see how that definition should fit into our code. Like Michael said, it's gonna be, those houses they're not gonna conform to what we have in our code now. So we might have to leave some provisions in there for, it's as part of the historical, part of Trinidad, because it was the first plat, I believe. But we might have to come up with that. Hopefully the ordinance will lead to something.
On some kind of an individual basis or what?
No, just the district as a whole. See if we as a commission could.
And Nick, I would say that because Nick has an original plat of the original plat of the town down here in your office.
Yeah.
This district's on that map, so I think it was part of the original platting of the town. I'd have to go back and look, but I know we talked about it the other
Yeah, I
day
probably did too.
when I was in your office.
I think it was
So
part of the
we'll look into
original
it,
planning for
but-
sure. Yeah.
Again, are we agreeing that we should probably have a definition if it's a zone?
I'm trying to figure out why you guys want it separate than just HP zoning. Like, why do you want to separate it out?
Well, to your point, you have buyers that are buying these historic homes and they're asking, are they subject to the historic guidelines?
But they're not.
And it's a residential, correct?
Nobody is.
That's,
I mean, the zoning, historic preservation has allowed uses, right? But there was, and we went through this with Audra. Audra actually sent me the ordinance that was repealed. Nobody, it's voluntary if you want to participate in the historic preservation guidelines. So it's totally voluntary wherever you are in HP zoning right now. That ordinance was passed and then repealed. So Audra can show it to you guys, because I actually, when Keely was here, she brought that up and I was like, Keely, you're wrong. I remember this. I said, I don't know why I remember, but it was like 20 years ago. There's something about you cannot force people in HP zoning to comply with
Right.
these standards. And so
Oh.
the very next morning.
You were here that night too, Tom?
I'm the one who repealed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I knew Tom was involved. I just.
2002, yeah,
You came
Yeah,
up here and gave a
2002.
speech on that.
That's
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, and so the next day, Audra sent me where they had a revote, it was repealed, it went to the voters of the citizens of Trinidad and it was repealed.
Right.
And that's where it lies. So,
so I don't disagree with that piece that you just stated. What I think we want to add in here though is, again, so if we go back to the code and the establishment of zone districts, so what this does is it just provides a description of what that zone is.
Right,
And I
and
think
then
it's
there's allowed
important, based
uses
on what
within
you,
it,
what you
right?
stated, that it clearly, that residential zone isn't the cordon, isn't this, right? The area of Trinidad, which has been identified for historic preservation, the area is subject to special design requirements and use restrictions in order to preserve its historic character.
Well,
We
what's
don't want that.
right, but what's
Why?
conflicting about that right there, if you look at the Corazon to Trinidad Historic Preservation map from the national historic perspective, it does not match our HP zoning. It's two different maps.
That's correct.
So how can you, that should be taken out right there, that Corazon to Trinidad Historic Preservation, because that is totally separate from the HP zoning. That's two
Well,
different things.
yeah, you're right. The National Historic designation is not a zone, right? So we're talking about the zoning map
Right,
versus a national boundary, which is not, they're two different,
two
that's
different,
not,
right.
historic,
But why are
historic
they throwing
districts
in
is
that
not,
Corazon to Trinidad Historic Preservation, because that was never there before, it was just historic preservation was the name of the classification of the zoning. And that's why I'm saying that HP zoning should be named something else, because it's not the same as the Corazon map for historic preservation. It's two different things. And that's where the confusion lies, because people keep thinking, if you're in this district, you're in HP zoning. Well, not necessarily. Like,
No,
I wish they
you're
would
right.
overlay it so people could see exactly what I'm trying to explain, but,
no, I see it now. So
okay.
what we need to do is, we need an HPMU and an HPRD in the descriptions.
And
We need to
take
bring
out the
those to
Corazon thing, because that's not correct.
We'll have to look at because there are some design standards that apply to this Corazon de Trinidad district in the remainder of the code.
Right? Voluntary, though.
Let's do this. This was enlightening, to say the least.
Sorry, this has been something
let us
that
do
I've been
that.
passionate about for a long time.
No, it's great.
Yeah, it's
This is
great.
why, I think what you're discussing, again, I don't have the history, and Nick doesn't have the history, but we have run into this now with the interpretation of the code. And so something has to change, right? The city staff can't just say, we don't know, when an applicant comes in. We need to have clarity here.
Right.
So let us come back, but I'm hearing from you, from the planning commission, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys want us to get to the bottom of this and bring something back, right?
You agree?
Yes.
This does come up quite a bit, the boundaries aren't the same, we talked about that quite a bit with the HPC liaison, I talked to her quite a bit about it. I also, that's probably the base one, the boundary, and, shoot, there was one more, I forgot, I'm sorry, I drew a blank, but, we'll dig into this one, and it has been an issue. The naming, we did talk about the naming of it being HP. It does confuse people, especially when they get a CO or they apply for a business license and they ask, well, what's my zoning? They have to be approved for zoning. And I put HP core zoning. They think they're part of the HP even though they're not, because they haven't contributed. So it has been an issue that's been ongoing. So.
Well, and I think the other thing that's confusing, and I think this is what it's important for Audra to give you guys that same ordinance that she sent to me that was repealed. People at City Hall keep telling people that there are these design standards, which is true, but it's voluntary. It cannot be required because that ordinance repealed it. I mean, it went before, that ordinance was repealed by a vote of the citizens. And I think it's very confusing to the public when they're being told, well, they're telling me there's these design standards. Well, there are, if you voluntarily want to participate. But you can't be forced to do it.
Do you remember what year that vote was?
2002.
2002.
Yeah.
2002.
No, that's really, actually, that's the first I've heard of all of this, and, it's really
I probably
important
could
for
find
me.
it for you real
Thank
quick, cause I save all these emails.
Yep, well, I think we have some homework to do then, as it relates to that, so let's pull that ordinance, Nick, and get a copy over to me, and
Yeah,
we can actually have a, I think there's certainly some historical knowledge of the staff too.
mhm.
To help with this.
Audra found it for me in like 3 minutes, so she
Oh,
knows
I
exactly
know.
what it is.
Yeah.
She's out of the rest
Yeah,
of
she's
this.
out there.
Oh, I'll send you the email she sent me.
And so we got the last one, we'll obviously keep working on through on that first, the last one, just talk about the HP. To that table, 1442, A is the dimensional standards. Staff wants to add a note that an 18-inch overhang, exception for eaves is allowed into the setback. So that's, ties back to the first one we talked about, actually. We just want to add a note to the table that we're measuring to the or basically reminding it when we're measuring to the face of the structure, not the overhang. And then we'll put in there that the eaves can extend over the property line, but they can encroach on the setback distance.
That's basically just what we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's right. It is, it's just adding the note into the table.
You see here, these are the notes that exist already on that table, so it'd be adding number 7 here. Just, again, for, this one is one of those, when folks read the zoning code, the number one thing they look at is the dimensional table when they're designing the house. And so having it right here, a place where we're encouraging them to do the historic architecture that they use, important place to put it. Same general agreement on that one, okay? It's land of historic preservation, so it's,
I agree with that.
I just sent you,
So there you go. I appreciate
it's
that.
got the ordinance number and the election results.
Oh, awesome. It has the ordinance and notes, that's perfect.
Some light reading.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's light reading.
Ordinance 1703. That was what was repealed.
what was it again?
1703, it was repealed, and it was repealed, the vote was done the 28th day of January 2003, was the special election where it was repealed. The ordinance that was repealed was put in September 17, 2002.
No, I really appreciate that history. That really helped with a couple things that I'm struggling with.
That's all I got. We'll come back with some formal recommendations on setback, limited impact review, concept review, I believe. And then I think we have work to do on the land dedication, subdivisions, HP, and then the last one we talked about, tied to the first one, so. That's all I got.
Is that all you got for staff?
For the amendment to the land use code, yes.
Okay, move on to chairman's report. I don't have any report. Commissioners,
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Norris,
I want to encourage everybody to hype up the lodging tax. Because without it, we will not have a Parks and Rec department, and without a Parks and Rec department, we don't get maintenance of our
Are they gonna
parks.
try to put that back on the ballot?
It's gonna come back through and it doesn't affect residents. It
You're
only
gonna have to
affects
convince
people
them of
coming
that.
in.
You'll have to convince them of that.
I know, it's well, it is, I mean, I work for a school district and we did a bond issue, bonds are very important for school districts, just as this is very important for the city of Trinidad. And it took a concerted effort on the part of the district, and we failed the first time. The second time, we did a concerted effort of educating the public and going out and talking to people, I mean, everybody lobbying for it, and then it passed. And so we have like the low, incredibly low lodging tax rate, and so we really need a Parks and Rec department.
Agreed.
So, any question?
Can I ask a question? So, you know how we were gonna see this vacation of a road? I thought, when Chininos, they vacated that road without coming before us, why are we seeing this one? And not, we didn't see Chininos?
Oh, you mean the one down there off of
Yeah,
Allen?
yeah. Do we
I don't
know
know.
how they're determining which ones we see and which ones we don't?
I don't know when that one was and what determined that one.
You know where it was.
When was it?
Which road?
The one going behind, like, where your building is, when you continue down for the
Maple?
dealership? Is it Maple? They vacated Maple, and that never came before us. And I asked the question, why didn't that come before us? And I was told that because of how we did the changing of everything, that was, vacations weren't coming before us anymore. So I was like, huh. No, we didn't vacate.
No, it didn't
Maple.
come before us.
It just got vacated. It was just done and gone.
How long ago was this?
Like
Was it
a year ago?
Probably, I think when, I think it was after the property purchase was complete. And then now they have to move forward so they can come up with the plans. And at some point in time, Maple Street, which ends, probably a half a block after Elm Street,
Where the Ford dealership's
where the
going?
Ford dealership's gonna go in down there. Cause Maple Street will get, or has been vacated.
But we didn't vacate it.
Didn't come for us.
Hey, let's look and see if that was actually filed. You're saying that you saw it coming from city council?
That one had,
It even showed it vacated, like when they came before us for something else, it showed on the plat vacated.
Was it Maple or was it the other one?
I can't remember.
Because it could be, maybe Maple's not, but so it would be easy to say that even behind, and I don't know what they call this street, but everybody should know this area, so the area behind the marketplace.
Yeah, that's.
When you come off, that would probably be the more opportune one to
Yeah.
look at, because that is for sure. That was a throughway that came from, is that from?
Cedar.
No, that's
Cedar
You're right, it's Plum.
Plum.
You're talking about Mill Road?
From Plum Street, and then it goes down and it connects to Cedar Street,
Right.
correct, but
Where they
now.
have all the tables and stuff.
And then they blocked that off, that's what got vacated right there. That
Yeah.
would come here.
No, it
So
didn't.
that's Mill Road. I
Well-
think that's Mill Road.
The one thing,
MIL.
let us look into that, but the one thing that could have happened is vacate can occur during the subdivision. So when they platted, this is just me reaching into the what if. What could have happened is when they platted that subdivision, that vacate was part of the subdivision replat and was approved at that point. So
But
they don't have,
Go ahead.
so we need to go back and look at that subdivision that platted all that area up, Nick, and see if that's maybe how it happened. And that, in fact, that you guys saw it, but it wasn't maybe, again, I apologize, it maybe wasn't called out to your attention when, in that plat, but they were doing that.
Because at that same time, they had to come back and give an easement to the plumbing shop to get in from the other side.
But
That was a
that's
separate
dealing with the Maple Street.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
dealing with Maple Street for the Ford
Yeah, I think
dealership.
it's,
Let us take a look, And then the other thing I would want to double check on is, under the old code, whether or not vacates had to come in front of the planning commission. We'd have to go back. We'll have to go back to the old code, because that might not have been the case. Vacates might have just.
That had to be done in 22 and 23.
Did you, before I was on here, I've never seen another vacate. Did you guys used to see?
So it was prior to the new code adoption, vacates might not have been required to come in front of planning commission.
It's just a
That
second.
was
That's the other-
The one up there, the.
That one didn't affect it.
It goes to the
Street
cross.
below the
It
cross.
just took out that pass.
Well, he was just saying I did see him.
But
We did do a vacate.
Where at?
It was right up by,
You had free gender,
yeah.
that was
Plumbing shop?
about a year ago,
Messes with all of us.
but that was an alleyway.
Even.
Yeah, but it was, yeah.
I'm running at the platform, so yeah.
So we are supposed to see.
Yes,
vacates.
yeah, so vacates are major impact, so they do come to planning commission, they actually, that's what we talked about earlier, the concept review is, that's why we're iffy on the concept review part of it, because vacates kinda don't add too much, because you guys are gonna see the vacate anyway, and then, once you make a recommendation, we'll take it to council, and they'll have to pass an ordinance.
On the one that we put back tonight, tabled it basically, do you have to let the people on Rico know? Even though it's
So,
vacated?
Hold on, I'm gonna cut you off. We can't talk about that application, and I apologize, because it's coming back before you get a public hearing. But I think, to answer your question, I think, because I heard enough of it, we do notice all the surrounding properties.
So I can go to staff and talk to staff?
If you want, yeah, let's not have an open dialogue about an application
All right.
at this moment. So if you have a specific question, please just direct it to Nick. Sorry, I don't want to get us into trouble in any way.
Okay,
Fair enough.
Sorry to cut you off.
that's fine. Any other commissioners' reports? Planning director report?
So, in January, you guys asked about Circle K. I've been in contact with, I'm sorry, not Circle K, the Frontier. I've been in contact with them.
Thank you.
They, 2 weeks ago, they gave me an email, said they're working on asbestos abatement. So they were finalizing they're trying to finalize it, they said 2 weeks ago. And then I also emailed them and they said they're gonna try to get this worked on. I emailed them their fence fell down because we know transients are probably getting in there. And so, I do have a line of contact with them, but it's hard because I can't really force them to really do anything at this point. So that's the Frontier. The Opera House, I met with the representative actually today. We looked around the building. He has a meeting with some city staff tomorrow about shoring up let me think how this is, the west corner, the northwest corner, I believe.
Right.
The one that has scrapped a fence right now, so they do have a plan to get that moving. They're gonna talk to city staff tomorrow and hopefully that could happen soon. So there was also some work he's gonna do on the back of the building to make sure you can safety it up a little bit.
What about the front there, where you have the canopy that nobody can go through anymore? And they're walking in the street, especially when it's a snow area.
Mhm. Well, that's why we're asking him to come in and talk to us about his plan to shore up the thing and see what we could do to get that sidewalk back open.
Yeah, because that's dangerous.
It is. So that's what, yeah, he's, like I said, he's gonna be I met with him today, we just walked around the building and he was telling me his initial plans and he's gonna come and come meet city staff tomorrow morning to make sure it's gonna be adequate, so.
Because everybody doesn't go up to the next block and get off.
I know, yeah. Yeah, I stood out there and watched and yeah, it's
You can sit there at the bank and all day long and watch what happens there. People are falling all the time.
All the time.
I helped pick one lady up that was 74 years old. And she tried to walk there, well, when you clean the snow, goes up against the curb.
Mhm.
So you're trying to walk on the outside of the snow, and she slipped and fell.
yeah. No, I understand where, the owner of that house is actually going through the ADO process as well. So she's gotten cited for the buildings disrepair, so, it's hard, we're going through that process. It's a slow process though, it is, because it's someone's property. We can't just take it or, it's not that easy, so
Anything else?
that's it.
Planning Director? Nothing else? Have a motion to
I have one quick, so we do have a training coming up, correct?
the 20th?
Yes.
Is it the 20th?
Something, I don't know why, but something wonky was going on. I got your email, but I could not open anything. I replied yes, but is there a way you can go back and maybe reiterate that back to me so I can see if I can reopen it?
So
I
there's
have to-
not an attachment. It's just basically a calendar invite, just letting you know that. Sam,
Okay.
yeah.
I was
So,
like, why is this not open?
it's just a calendar invite, so you can mark it on your calendar. So a gentleman from CERS is coming to do training. Steve Ruger, the city manager, will get up and speak about do's and don'ts, what's expected. Les Downs, the city attorney, will get up and talk about, rules of decorum and that type of thing. I'm actually gonna get up and speak about agendas and citizen interest forms and that type. So it should be a really good training, and it's a good refresher. I believe they're gonna talk about the rules and Robert's rules and all that stuff too. So if you can make it, it would be great.
And it's for all boards, right?
All boards and
Yeah.
commissions, 8 to
Yeah.
12, the 20th at Space to Create.
And are they still talking about doing one for us as a
Yeah.
planning?
I emailed, Casey McPherson and Tara Marshall, and I'm hopeful that we get it scheduled for April. I'm trying.
Probably out of the month of April.
So this one's just basically for all boards and commissions.
Yeah. Yeah, so be nice.
I'd really love to know what we're supposed to be doing. It would be great.
That'd be nice.
The state offers, Casey first, and I've actually sat through several of her trainings with other planning commissions. The state through DOLA does a really fantastic job, so we're trying to get that arranged just for the planning commission.
Beautiful.
It's a matter of just trying, they're really busy at the state, so we've been hassling them and we're trying to get something on the books.
Nothing else? Yeah?
That's it.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Over. Thank you for coming.